Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yater Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, The Forward Corporation, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Hammond Drives and Equipment, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network on great radio stations across our great state of Michigan. And as always, so glad to have you along with us as we continue to work our way through this winter. We continue to work our way towards springtime. Now, listen, I shouldn't be wishing the wintertime away. I realize there are indeed many people who love the winters here in Michigan, but I'm kind of looking forward to springtime. And with the weather the way it has been this last week or so, to be honest, don't you find yourself thinking about springtime? Even if you are a hardcore ice fisherman, a hardcore skier, a hardcore snowmobiler, aren't you maybe just a little bit leaning towards springtime with maybe just a little bit of spring fever? Come on, it's okay. It's okay to admit it. I've had spring fever for weeks now. I certainly admit to that. So what do I always say is one of the first signs that spring is moving our direction here in Michigan? It's the dead skunk in the road. I always say, in my world, okay? Now, listen, this is unscientific, it's anecdotal, but it's in my world. That first dead skunk to me is like, it stinks, but it's almost a sweet smell because I know what's coming up. Last Sunday, saw the first dead skunk with my own eyes. I'd had reports of him, but I saw the first dead skunk with my own eyes. And I wanted to stop because I always stop and take some pictures of that first dead skunk, and I post it. But this one was on the freeway, and unfortunately, it was right on a curve. And I thought, if we stop so I can get a picture of that skunk that got smucked by a car, we're going to get smucked by a car, and it's just not worth it. So I was not able to post pictures or video of that first dead skunk, but I saw him, and he's out there. The real sign of spring in my mind is when the red-winged blackbirds come back. We've got a pond behind the house, and I don't consciously realize when the red-winged blackbirds leave, and that sound they make, that shrill sound they make. But when they come back, believe me, the first time I hear it, whatever I'm doing, I stop. And I look around and go, okay, here's spring. The red-winged blackbirds are back. For some people, the real sign is when the sandhill cranes come back. I say that's also a very accurate sign of spring. The one thing I don't go along with is robins. Our state bird, the robin. Why do we have a state bird that most of them abandon us during wintertime? Why do we have a state bird that most of them fly south for the winter? Shouldn't we have a state bird that sticks around here and enjoys the wintertime with us? But the reason I don't trust robins is because they don't all fly south. I've seen robins 11 months a year. So I've seen robins in January. So seeing a robin's like, yeah, okay, there's a robin. I shouldn't diss robins, but I do. I diss robins. So ice and snow. We've lost a lot of snow. We've lost some ice with this thaw, with the rain. As I'm sitting here in the studio now, looking out the window, it's really raining, and it's pretty warm. And it's cutting a lot of snow, and it's cutting ice. I reached out and realized this is Wednesday, okay? We always time shift on this show. It is not live. So by the time you hear the broadcast version this weekend, this information will be a little bit old already. But I reached out to Captain Jason Graham of Send It Charters on Saginaw Bay. And I said, Jason, how is the ice holding up on Saginaw Bay? And he said, well, yesterday it was still okay. He said, but I haven't been out there now after the rain. So be cautious, be careful, use your, I'm not one of those people who says the ice is never safe. Like the Coast Guard used to. That used to drive me crazy. Coast Guard Station, Saginaw River, don't go out on the ice. The ice is never safe. In the meantime, there were 5,000 anglers on the ice in front of the Coast Guard Station. Well, you lose a lot of credibility when you make statements like that, when you look out there and see, obviously, the ice can indeed be safe. But it can also be dangerous. So just, use your wits. Last week here on the show, I talked about baiting. I talked about the NRC, and I talked about our state legislature. And I said that as much as I would like baiting to come back, and I suspect it will, I don't want it to happen because of our state legislature. I don't want politicians deciding our fish and game laws, even though they have the power, they have the authority to do it. I don't think it's a good idea. I would rather such decisions come from the NRC, the Natural Resources Commission. And a lot of people said to me, Avery, you're being naive because the NRC is a very political body. Well, I'm not being naive. I understand that the NRC is a very political body. The Natural Resources Commission, those commissioners are appointed by the governor. So, of course, it is political. And I am not a big fan of our NRC the last couple of years. I don't think they have been friends of Michigan hunters and anglers. 2 examples. When they said that the perception of a year-round coyote hunt to non-hunters was one of the reasons they originally banned year-round coyote hunting. That's, don't make decisions on optics, okay? That's when I started to get a little hinky about our Michigan Natural Resources Commission. So I've been following them quite closely the last couple of years, and I will be honest. I wouldn't know them, any of the commissioners, except for Becky Humphreys, because I knew her when she was a biologist at the Gratiot-Saginaw Game Area years and years ago. I wouldn't know an NRC commissioner if they came up to me on the street. I suspect that all of them individually are very good people. But as a whole, as a body, as a group, I don't think they've been friends of Michigan hunters and anglers like they should be. Another example of that. Last summer, there was supposed to be a meeting in Bay City, and not enough of the commissioners showed up to get a quorum to vote on things. So you're telling me that you don't take our Michigan hunting and fishing laws and policies and the administration of seriously enough that enough of you will show up to have a meeting? So no, I'm not naive. I understand that the NRC is a political body. They are appointed by the governor, which is wrong. I think that's just wrong. So am I a big fan of the Michigan Natural Resources Commission recently? No. Do I hope that maybe they can do things differently in the future? Yes. Am I optimistic that'll happen? I think optimism would be too strong of a statement. But even so, I would rather have the NRC, the Natural Resources Commission, make those decisions instead of our state legislature, our politicians. If the NRC would do the job that they are supposed to do, that they are charged with doing, and I'll use the example of baiting for whitetails, if they would do that, if they would make that decision and open it back up, then people wouldn't be going to the politicians and asking the politicians to do it. The politicians are only doing it because their constituents ask them to do it. Politicians do one thing. They get votes to stay in office. And if enough people go to the politicians and complain about it, the politicians will take some action. That's probably not the way we should do our fish and game laws. The NRC, if they did it according to the way they should do it, they would listen to the DNR, they would listen to the constituents, and they would make a decision based on sound scientific wildlife management practices. Have they been doing that? Not necessarily. Have they been doing a better job of it than what I think the legislature will do? In my opinion, yes. So that's all I'm saying. I'm not naive enough to think that the NRC is some high and mighty organization filled with scientists and biologists who have the ultimate goal of our fish and game laws and protecting our resources and doing the most for Michigan hunters and anglers. No. Should they? Yes. Do they? Not necessarily. Events coming up. Outdoorama is this weekend it used to be the Novi Expo Center and then the Suburban Collection Showplace. I don't even know what it's called now. I'm not going to try to keep track of it. That is this weekend along with and in conjunction with MUCC's convention. It's going to be a very interesting convention, or as you're hearing this maybe on Sunday, it was an interesting convention. More on that next week. Saturday, March 7th, our big Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction. one.bidpal.net/Trinity Monitor. That's kind of cumbersome, though. If you would like tickets, send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, and I will hook you up. Our next Wednesday night live at the Lumberjack Restaurant in West Branch, the Forward Corporation Lumberjack Restaurant, Wednesday, April 15th. That's tax day. We'll start taking reservations for that on March 1st. Coming up on this week's show after the break, Mike Smith. I'm going to talk to Mike about an ice fishing adventure he had on Lake Erie. Compare that to Saginaw Bay. Then Dan Cooke from the Michigan Wildlife Council with an update on their Here for Generations campaign. In our second hour, DNR wildlife biologist Chad Stewart on the recent moose research done in the Yup. We'll also get a wrap-up of the deer season. Then Caitlin Boon talks about the Master Angler program. She answers this week's Ask Avery question from a viewer. And in our third hour, veteran outdoorsman Tom Lounsbury on all things outdoors in Michigan. And we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. My name is Mike Avery. This show is called Outdoor Magazine. My website, mikeaveryoutdoors.com. My email address is mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK 105.7 FM. You can hear us in St. Joe, WSJM 94.9 FM, and you can hear us north of the bridge in Marquette, WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your Mid-Michigan Angler Quest headquarters. For more information, check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com, linwoodbeachmarina.com. Linwood Beach Marina has been a very popular Saginaw Bay ice fishing jumping-off spot this winter. Ice conditions on the bay have been very good, and lots of people have been getting lots of fish, including Captain Mike Smith of Offshore Account Sportfishing, offshoreaccount.com, offshoreaccount.com. But Mike decided here this last week that he was going to do something a little bit different, and we've got him on the Outdoor Magazine phone line to talk more about that. Mike, welcome back. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good. I'm sitting here in the studio. I'm looking out the window, and it's raining hard. Are you still down on Lake Erie right now, Mike?
I am currently home with a warm cup of coffee, drying out shanties, and fixing snowmobiles.
But you did just take an ice fishing adventure down on Lake Erie. Why jump from Saginaw Bay to Erie, Mike? What was the thinking there?
It's so rare. It's been 11 years, I think, since Lake Erie had ice where we could do what we did this last week. And it seemed like there was a lot of people who were looking for a guide service down there and having a hard time finding it. And I thought, I want to go there. And if they need somebody to take them, this seems like a good fit.
How did you know where to start? Because I know Saginaw Bay is your home body of water, but you've spent some time open water fishing on Erie. Do you go where you were last with the boat and start from there, or what?
I've been following the ice conditions down there, trying to see where the safest accesses were, kind of keeping an eye on where people were catching fish, knowing where the fish should be moving on Erie, which doesn't always work out for you. And then we were in contact with some friends that had been down there, so we kind of had some pointers on where to get started and, helped each other out as the week went on, moving around, trying to stay on some fish.
So did you take a bunch of Michigan guys down, or did you have locals from Erie as your clients?
I had people come down from Michigan. I had locals from Erie. I had Indiana. I had people from all over come over there to fish with us.
So there aren't a lot of folks who guide ice fishermen on Erie?
That's what I was picking up on, and then it sounded like the ones that were doing it, maybe, I don't weren't calling people back or something like
Yeah.
that. And I figure the easiest thing to do is answer your phone when somebody calls you. So
If you're in the business of taking people fishing and somebody calls you and wants to go fishing, you should probably answer the call.
I try to do my best at that. That's the first part of the job.
Yeah, and I know you do a great job on that, Mike. So what is ice fishing on Lake Erie like, and how is it? How does it compare to Saginaw Bay?
It's a totally different animal. There's more water there. There's less holding that ice back than we have on Saginaw Bay. There's some crazy currents down there at times, and the ice just shifts around randomly. I mean, the one day we had a slight offshore wind, and we had gone out in the dark and found a crack that was open 7 feet right in the trail that we drove over the night before.
Ooh.
And as the day went on, that crack shut. And my thought was that it actually opened at shore more. And when I went in at lunchtime, everything was tight all the way to the shore, even with the wind blowing out. So that lake does some really crazy stuff, and you definitely got to have your head on a swivel and be paying attention.
You know, when I hear stories like that, I don't want to say it makes me nervous. I mean, it would make me nervous to go out by myself for sure. But that's why going out with a guide or a captain or a local or somebody who's been out there, it really, it makes sense in the summertime, but it makes more sense in the winter.
Yeah, and the first day out, it was just a buddy and I laying tracks. We didn't go out until daylight. Everything that looked like it could be a potential separation point, we put a waypoint on it so that we knew driving that track back in that we needed to slow down, get eyes on it, make sure nothing had changed from the time we crossed it previously. And that stuff goes a long way. Just paying attention to that little stuff is going to keep you from just driving into an open spot or having some kind of accident that you don't want to have.
So when you do these trips, do people bring their own quads, their own sleds? Do you provide them? How does that work?
So with my outfit, I guide typically up to 6 people. Snow machines provided, shanties provided, heaters, rods, electronics, bait, everything's provided. I did down there also do some follow-out trips, which is people show up with their own gear, their own machine, and they just pay us to follow us out for the day and have safe travel there and back. And, if they break down, we help them get in. And I typically only do those for snow machines just because that's all we're running. And if we encounter something like these cracks, we're not getting slowed down by something with wheels on it.
I've actually seen a quad. I've seen a quad go into a crack before. I think you have too.
Yeah, we have been there. We have seen that. And that quad was on Lake Erie with us this time, and it was uneventful. So that was a good thing.
Well, that may have been uneventful, but I hear you did have some excitement with one of your sleds.
Oh, well, a couple of them. Lake Erie really was throwing some curveballs. Luckily, this stuff was all near shore. One morning, we were driving out, and the crack at the end of the canal was maybe 2.5 feet wide, which for a snowmobile, if you just keep driving, you're fine. I'd crossed it, and I always flash my rear light to let people know just, hey, pay attention, but keep going. And I think the snowmobile just went a little bit too slow, and the rear end of the sled dropped down into the crack. Luckily, the skis were still up, and I carry every kind of recovery piece of equipment I can on my sled: tow straps, jumper cables, winch, and we were able to pull it out, get it back to shore. Everybody was fine. Nobody got wet or hurt, so that's the most important part, and that's the project I'm working on today, is getting that fixed back up and ready for the ice again.
So it was a client driving this thing out, and nothing against them. I mean, if you haven't done this before, you don't know, but he didn't go in the water, correct?
No, they were basically off the machine onto the ice the way the crack was, so they were fine. No, like I said, nobody was hurt. I mean, it's a blend of stuff. It's, inexperienced drivers on snow machines, which I have all the time. I mean, all the time. I get tons of people who've never even been on one. And this is the first time in 8 years of guiding that we've ever had anything like this happen. So now going forward, I'm just paying extra special attention to, when there's this little bit of a crack, I'm stopping and making sure I'm talking everybody through it, no matter their experience level, just so we can have this problem be avoided, because it should be.
So the sled that went in the water, you're working on that now. You're getting it up and running. Are you getting it running because you're going to go back on Saginaw Bay now?
Yeah, we're back on Saginaw Bay. Actually, I jumped in the truck in Ohio yesterday, probably 11 in the morning, and my first stop was at Frank's Great Outdoors, and then I was back right out on Saginaw Bay fishing last night.
Oh, you were? Okay. And how was it, Mike?
The fishing was a little slow, but the ice conditions were still surprisingly very good. I think we were sitting on close to 20 inches of ice where we were, and there was actually still a lot more patchy snow out there than I thought would be left. And hopefully today that holds. It sounds like my friends over there on the Bay Shore say they're getting more of a freezing rain than this rain, so that should help.
You know, one thing I forgot to ask you about being down there on Erie, which is known for big fish. Did you get into those big fish?
We didn't get a lot of them, but the first group that I had out, it was the guy's first time ever ice fishing, and of all places, he ends up on Lake Erie, and right at dark as I was packing up, he caught a 10-pound walleye.
Ooh.
And I told him, I said, it takes a lot of people a long time to catch a fish like that, and you just did it your first time ice fishing.
Did he appreciate it? Did he realize what he had there?
Oh, yeah, he was over the moon when I told him, what kind of a fish that is, and especially for your first time. I mean, I called it beginner's luck for him, but, I couldn't have been happier to see the smile on that guy's face holding that fish.
So if I would have been sitting in a shanty with you down there on Erie, would that experience, the fishing itself, been very similar to what I had with you last winter on Saginaw Bay?
The actual fishing part, yeah. But we had so many fish under our shacks down there that we had a hard time getting them to bite. But at one time, I think I counted 15 fish on my live scope screen swarming my bait, but not biting it.
Why?
And, I mean, we just saw so many fish that did that.
I guess this is the $64,000 question, but why weren't those fish biting?
I really wish I had the answer to that, because we threw everything but the kitchen sink at them trying to figure out what to do. And when they did eat, I mean, it was impressive. They came in super fast. They came in very aggressive, and you didn't even have to blink, and they'd be on your hook. And then the other ones would just frustrate you.
That live scope for ice fishing is pretty sweet, isn't it?
It gives you a lot more information. It does not catch more fish. I can promise that. But you see a lot more, and you learn a lot more about how these fish are acting, and maybe even directions that they're coming from and things like that.
What do you mean by it doesn't catch more fish? What do you mean by that?
Well, having the fanciest electronics doesn't make those fish bite the end of the line and get them in the hole. So,
yeah. So your setup were minnows on a jig and stick. Any dead sticks? Any tip-ups?
We didn't run any tip-ups. I did run a dead stick in every shack. We had some success with those, just a plain treble hook with a minnow on it. We ran anything, Swedish pimples, jig and rapalas, all types of rattle baits. We were switching stuff up in and out, and one of our better baits was just the Saginaw Bay staple, the good old #1 dew jigger.
Well, it sounds like it was an interesting adventure. I know the guys that went down there with you had a lot of fun, but now you're going to put your efforts back on Saginaw Bay. Any idea, Mike? Can you guess at all? Or, how long is the ice going to hold up out there? You're going to be out there for a few weeks yet, or are you starting to get to the end of the season?
Well, I see we have more cold coming. I wouldn't be shocked if we're fishing into the first week of March this year unless we get a warm-up with the big south winds, and I don't see that in the forecast yet.
How does that compare like last year? How long did your season go last year?
I quit around the third week of February. We tried to go out that week, and there was just new cracks opening on the west shore. The winds were being horrendous, and there was no snow on the ice. It was just getting to a point where it wasn't worth taking people out there and just tempting fate anymore when that ice starts doing new stuff at the end of the season like that.
Yeah. Hang tight, Mike. We're talking with Mike Smith of Offshore Account Sportfishing, the website offshoreaccount.com. Offshoreaccount.com. Mike is just getting back from fishing a week on Lake Erie for trophy fish, and they got, a 10-pounder. That's a trophy fish. Now he's putting his efforts back on Saginaw Bay. We'll talk with Mike about that. Also, open water season is coming up not too far away. We'll see if he has any thoughts on that. Coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Traverse City on WTCM 580 AM. You can hear us in Port Huron, WPHM 1380 AM. And north of the bridge in the Sioux, WKNW 1400 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Versa Skins, Michigan-based, family-owned Versa Skins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. Why buy a bunch of different sets of expensive hunting clothes when you can buy one good quality set? Snap on, zip on an outer shell of a different camo pattern in less than a minute. If you need big sizes, I'm talking 4, 5, 6X. Versa Skins can help you out. If you are a saddle hunter, Versa Skins makes jackets specifically for saddle hunters. Check them out online at versaskins.com or go to amazon.com and do a search for Versa Skins brand. Versa Skins, just change your skin for the season you're in. Now, right now, we are still in the winter season, but boy, with this weather we've had the last week or so, it feels like maybe starting to make a little bit of a transition toward springtime. I'm talking now with Captain Mike Smith of Offshore Account Sportfishing, his website, offshoreaccount.com, offshoreaccount.com. Mike, how many years have you been chartering, been guiding now?
I'm in my 8th season.
8 seasons, and you're... Man, when you jumped into it, you jumped in with both feet, didn't you?
Yeah, working full time and trying to do this almost. I mean, as a full time, it feels like it's a lot, a lot of long days and lack of sleep.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it. I follow your schedule sometimes. I'm thinking, I don't know how you do it. Is the goal, and I don't want to get into your business here, but eventually you'll retire from your full time job and then you can just guide and charter. Is that the goal?
Yeah, that's kind of the hope. I hope to have it build up pretty strong by then and a good client base and just kind of keep this thing rolling and enjoy my retirement doing what I love to do.
Perfect. So as we get into the tail end of ice fishing on Saginaw Bay, how is the fishing? Assuming the ice is holding up good, how is the fishing? Does it get better as we get later into the winter, closer to spring and the spawn?
It should start getting better. These fish should start pushing in tighter to shore, staging up, cruising down toward the rivers, and if you can cut them off on their way there, you can have some really, really good sits of fishing.
And what's the setup? You know, for people who haven't done this before, who think they want to come into the area, give them some tips. How do they start? What do they use?
So you can use basic stuff for walleyes out there. You don't need expensive rods and reels. Just something to get your line down in there. Basic lures from Frank's has everything you need. Dew jiggers, buckshot spoons, things like that work just fine out there. Tipping them with a minnow head or even a smaller hole minnow. Electronics obviously help with that. The biggest thing if you're going to venture out there is if you don't know what you're doing and you're not familiar, find somebody who is and go with them.
Well, you mentioned earlier your follow-out service. A lot of the guides do that. I think that is an excellent choice for people who don't have a lot of experience out there.
Yeah, that's just going to get you out there safe, hopefully get you on some fish. But, there's some insurance there when you're coming back after dark that if something happens, you've got somebody there with you and you're not stuck out there in the dark by yourself.
When do you anticipate you would start open water trolling? I mean, I realize that it depends on Mother Nature, but are you one of those guys, as soon as the ice is gone, boom, you're out there in the boat?
The first boat launch that opens on Lake Erie, I will have the Warrior down there fishing.
And why Erie again? Because it opens earlier?
It's going to open earlier, and those big fish are going to be staging around the reef complex, and the fishing is just phenomenal in the spring down there.
Is that that's a trolling fishery, right, for the most part?
Yeah, we do a lot of trolling. Last year, we started doing a lot more of the live scope casting on Saginaw Bay, and I plan to do more of that on Erie this year, especially if I have clients that want to, or if I'm fishing for myself, I'm going to do more of that instead of trolling. But trolling is a very, very productive technique down there in the spring. Yeah,
I remember you guys were experimenting with casting last year, and the thing about that surprised me, Mike, is I assumed you were casting to fish on the bottom, but you were actually targeting suspended fish, aren't you?
Just wide open, no structure, fish as high as 5 feet under the surface. It was really a learning experience, and it was a lot of fun to do it.
Are those fish aggressive, or does it depend on the day?
It depends on the day, but those ones that were high in the column were typically very aggressive. Like I said, you'd watch them, the bait splash, and those fish would turn right up at it and come grab it. Pretty much before you click your bail sometimes, the fish would be on there.
Do you think, and I'm just thinking out loud here because I know that, you don't hesitate to head out deep, but you don't mind your skinny water either. Do you think casting in skinny water is an option?
It sure is. I don't think the live scope electronics are as prevalent in the really shallow water, but you could go up there and cast, especially if you know there are fish in the area after you've been, say you've been trolling in there and catching them. If they're in the area, you can go in there and cast and catch those fish for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. It's something to keep in mind, Mike, and I will be talking with you as we get closer to the open water trolling season. Sounds like you had an interesting adventure down on Erie. I wish you a wonderful season on Saginaw Bay, heading back down to Erie, and you and I will stay in touch.
Sounds good, buddy. Thanks for having me again. All
right, my pleasure. Mike Smith of Offshore Account Sportfishing, offshoreaccount.com, offshoreaccount.com. Oh, that skinny water. I can't wait to get back in that skinny water. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, we'll wrap up this opening hour with Dan Cooke of the Michigan Wildlife Council with an update. I like to get a monthly update from the folks there on the Here for Generations campaign. Their website, hereformioutdoors.org. They're doing a wonderful job in promoting and encouraging and protecting and defending our way of life to folks who might not enjoy it like we do. An update coming up after the break with Dan Cooke of the Michigan Wildlife Council right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Carroll on WKYO 1360 AM and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM, and you can hear us north of the bridge. I mean, way north of the bridge in Iron Mountain, WMIQ 1450 AM. The reason I do this show, this radio show, and the social media stuff that I play around with, is because I have a love for this outdoor lifestyle, hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping. I grew up doing this. My family's been doing this for generations. I've been blessed to be able to make a career out of promoting it and participating in those activities. And I like to put a positive spin on what we're doing whenever possible. And it's not hard, because we as hunters and anglers and shooters and trappers, we're the good people. We're the good guys. We wear the white hats. We pay for conservation. We pay for habitat improvement. But not everybody in our state realizes that. So when I heard about this group, and this has been several years ago now, called the Michigan Wildlife Council, when I heard that they were forming to promote our way of life, I said, I want to work with these people. And I was fortunate to establish a partnership with them when they first hit the ground, and I've been working with them ever since. Dan Cooke is a member of that council. He's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Dan, welcome back. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Mike. It's good to be back. How are you doing?
I am doing great. I admit I got a little spring fever going with this warm spell we've had the last week or so.
Yeah. No, it's been it has been a true Michigan winter,
Yes.
Which has been great for our state, great for our economy, but at the same time, you kind of hit that midpoint in February where you're like, you know what would feel really good? Sunshine. Warm, bright sunshine.
Yeah, exactly. And it's coming. It's coming. How are things at the council, Dan? I think your term is almost up, so congrats on everything you've accomplished along the way. If you don't get renewed, I will miss you, but I'm sure we'll be in touch. But how are things going?
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Mike. No, things are going really well. We actually just recently received our 2026 Conservation Attitudes Report, which for the council is really the annual, let's call it State of the Mission report. And fortunately, indicators are looking good. With our main focus of promoting hunting and fishing and trapping as part of Michigan's core heritage. We've seen a lot of receptive feedback to that messaging. According to this report, 75% of Michigan residents approve of hunting, 82% approve of fishing.
Wow.
And yeah, so there's an overwhelming support across the state, and it's showing that attitudes are improving as a whole. And within that, people are especially approving of not only that hunting, especially is important for maintaining a healthy deer population and also providing food, and here's the part that I'm most excited about. The vast majority of Michiganders agree that hunting and fishing are core parts of our culture and heritage. So the mission is absolutely aligning with Michigan residents. It's really exciting stuff over here at the council.
Oh, that's wonderful news. I'm so glad to hear that. And I'm assuming that the percentages you're talking about, the approval percentages, are higher than when you started.
Yes, they are higher. It's interesting. According to the report, they've improved by a few clicks, not too many, since I've only been on the council for a few years, and the council since Governor Snyder brought us into existence has really been pushing hard to rebut against national perceptions. We're actually dipping for a bit in the 2010s. But what we're seeing mostly is that, especially in the last 2 years, those groups that are in favor, like strongly in favor of hunting, have grown by about 3%. The group in the middle, which we're really trying to attract, people who weren't really sure if they were in favor of hunting, fishing, and trapping or not, we've seen a large growth there, probably in about 10 to 15%. What is a little bit of concern is the far opposite end, the group that strongly disapproves of hunting and fishing. They've grown about 2%. So there is a little bit of polarization, but fortunately the main demographic in the middle that was kind of in the purgatory of deciding whether or not they wanted to approve of hunting and fishing or not, they've moved much more into the approval camp. So we're very happy with that.
The hardcore antis growing only 2%. I mean, we're never going to reach those folks, Dan. You and I both know that. But the
Exactly.
middle, that's what I always say, the group in the middle who are just, they don't know one way or another. To have that grow at 10 to 15%, that is huge. So congrats on that. Congrats to the Michigan Wildlife Council. Dan Cooke, I appreciate your dedication to the cause. I'll send people to the website here for MIOutdoors.org, here for MIOutdoors.org. Dan, we'll talk again one way or another.
Fantastic, Mike. Thank you so much for having me on.
Always a pleasure. We'll take a break here. John, you handled that very well because I was watching your face. I was like, okay, we'll take a break for the top of the hour. That's so unprofessional to do that, too. But young Jonathan Dent saved me. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in our second hour, Chad Stewart, Michigan DNR wildlife biologist, on the recent moose research being done, a wrap-up of deer season, and we'll talk with Caitlin Boon about the Master Angler Program in Hour 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yater Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, The Forward Corporation, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Hammond Drives and Equipment, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction. And welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show. Right here in the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network, heard on great stations across our great state of Michigan. And I tell you this every week, if you can, I think the best way to listen to the show is on your local radio station, your local AM or FM station. The broadcast stations are the backbone of this entire concept, this franchise, this adventure, Outdoor Magazine Radio. But if you live in some part of our state where you can't hear the broadcast signal, isn't it nice to know that there's a podcast version of the show that is available? There's so much confusion these days about broadcasting and podcasting. The content of this show is exactly the same no matter where you listen to it. If you hear it on your local radio station, it's a broadcast. If you hear it somewhere else, it's a podcast. Where do you hear the podcast version of my show? Well, it's on the website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I put it on my Facebook page. It's on all of the usual podcast platforms. SoundCloud, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, yada, 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 yada. I even put it on YouTube. I do like podcasting, though. I think it's a wonderful form of getting the word out, of telling stories. And it's so easy to do, and it's so inexpensive. I mean, the phone that you have in front of you right now, probably, you could produce a podcast with that. And if your content is good, if your subject matter is interesting, you will gather an audience. I do podcasts, by the way, each month for some of my advertising partners, including Offshore Tackle, Killer Food Plots, and Angler Quest Pontoons. And today, when we're done here in the studio recording this week's radio show, we will record this month's Angler Quest podcast. So keep an ear out for that. Regardless, though, of how you're hearing my voice, when you are hearing this voice, if it's the broadcast version of the podcast, thank you. I appreciate it. Now, 2026 is my 45th year in broadcasting. And as one of my good friends, Lanny, said, boy, you think you'd be better at it by now. Lanny, you nailed it there, buddy. I got to tell you, you absolutely nailed it. But one of the advantages of being around for so long is I've had a chance to see a lot of really cool projects and programs and experiences. And right now I'm thinking about the Moose Lift, which happened, I don't know how many years ago, but just about this time of year. And our Michigan DNR partnered with Safari Club and the Ontario DNR. And we traded, listen to this, we traded Michigan turkeys for Ontario moose. I think we came out ahead of that one. I think we came out okay. Now, back at the time when we did the very first Moose Lift, the DNR said we'd have 1,000, well, the goal was we would have 1,000 moose in the year UP by the year 2000. We didn't make it. What is the actual number of moose in the UP? Well, that's a good question. Chad Stewart is one of the folks who has been working on this. Now, you know Chad's name. You probably know him in conjunction with the Michigan Deer Program, but he's also working with moose and elk, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Chad, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me again.
Always a pleasure. You're back from the UP now?
Yes, got back 2:30 in the morning on, I think it was Wednesday. I lost track of my days. So, yeah, we put in a full day and took a long trip back down here to the Lansing area just to get set up for meetings the next day. So, yeah, it's been a long but rewarding couple days.
So tell us about the latest moose research. What was the goal, and what were you guys physically involved in?
Yeah, this is basically phase 2 of the project that we started last year. Hopefully most of your listeners know that we started a project in conjunction with the Keweenaw Bay Indian community and Northern Michigan University, some researchers there. Also received, again, more funding from Safari Club International. And we put out 20 collars last year on moose, 10 cows, 5 bulls, and 5 older calves, basically essentially yearling calves, just to start the project so we can start understanding population dynamics more about moose and try to understand where they're going, what their survival rates are, what their habitat occupancy is, just as much as we can. Early data coming in is really fascinating. And this year we deployed over 40 collars to further build up what we call our sample size. So now we've got 58 moose that we're going to be actively collaring here over the coming months and years. So it's going to give us a lot more information moving forward to help understand what's going on with our moose in the Upper Peninsula.
I remember that the original moose that were brought in were collared as well, but of course those collars have long since. In fact, the animals, I'm sure, aren't around anymore. But did you not learn from that first part of the process what you were hoping? Did you learn anything at all from that, Chad?
I don't know if I can speak to some of the stuff that was done
Sure.
40 years ago.
Sure.
We certainly have been tracking and monitoring the moose population through aerial surveys, but we're only looking at that in our core moose area. So it's not like we can survey the entirety of the Upper Peninsula. It's just time prohibitive, cost prohibitive. There's a lot of things going on there. So we've been really focusing on that core area. And from the mid-1990s through about the mid-2000s, we were seeing pretty steady growth. I would say about 10%. And then or in the early 2010s, 2011s, growth pretty much flatlined. So that was, certainly notable. But one thing that we started to notice when we started talking about this a couple of years ago is that even within the core range where we are surveying moose, the areas where they occupied at higher densities has changed within that 10-year period. So when I first came up here, it was very noticeable that a majority of the moose that we were seeing were located north of 41, really between like Champion and as you stretch all the way out to eventually Covington, which I don't believe is on 41, but out in that direction, it's all north of 41 up to the lakeshore. What we're seeing now is a shift, and many of those moose have shifted to the southwest. To the point now where we're seeing greater densities between off of 141, basically, so between Covington and Amasa. So part of the discussion is is our moose population stagnant, or are they starting to shift their range to where we're not really picking them up in the core anymore? Has the core changed? And this is what part of the questions that we're hoping to answer through this project.
Would the core have changed because habitat has changed? You don't have the cedar swamps you used to? Is that the type of thing you're talking about, Chad?
Yeah, I think that's part of the question that we're trying to answer. So again, with these collars that we're putting on, we're going to be able to see where these moose are spending their time, both, throughout the winter and also the summer months, and compare that to, the habitat that's around them and start making informed decisions about how moose are, redistributing on the landscape, or is it part of a decreased survival? Which the early numbers are we've seen pretty high survival from at least the 20 moose that we've collared and the 30 plus that we've been monitoring.
So what do moose like for habitat? I mean, you see pictures of them standing waist deep or knee deep in water. With lily pads around. But when I've seen them in Ontario, I see them out in the bush where there isn't a lot of water around. What do they want?
I think it depends seasonally. So, right now, what we're finding them in is anywhere between some of those hemlock, balsam thickets and covers, but they also are very much getting into cuts where you're starting to see different like willow regeneration, different poplar coming up. I mean, just topology coming up. So just lots of woody browse, thick browse, because, these animals are, upwards of 1,000 pounds. They need a lot of food to maintain that diet. So they are going out and finding some of that fresh forage and fresh browse, and that's where they need. Now, in the summertime, I think water is really important because they really need to thermoregulate. So they need to make sure that they are cooled down. But, the winter that's being experienced up right now and throughout most of the Upper Peninsula is those animals were built for that.
Yeah. And we'll talk more about that after the break, Chad. We're talking with Chad Stewart of the Michigan DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. Chad, is there a separate site or a page for moose? Where do we go to find out more about that?
Yeah, we're in the process of building some of that out, I believe, and providing updates on the project. I think more of that will be coming out here in the coming months as we get our feet under us. But yeah, definitely there'll be more press releases and announcements about the status of this project.
Well, we're not going to wait for those press releases because after the break, I'm going to ask Chad some of those questions that will probably be covered in those releases. So we'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, more with Chad about Michigan moose. I am fascinated by Michigan moose. If you ever seen a moose, they are so ugly, they're beautiful, and they're surprisingly big. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Muskegon on WKBZ 1090 AM, and you can hear us in the UP in Newberry, WNBY 1450 AM. Speaking of the UP, you know what that sound is. That's my Rapid River knife locking back open. My Rapid River knife that I just took out of my pocket. It lives there all of the time. This one happens to be the Avery signature knife, but I have several Rapid River knives. I'm finding that Rapid River knives are kind of like an addiction, maybe an obsession. You don't get one, you get several. And the reason for that is these things are handmade by craftsmen in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Go to the website, rapidriverknifeworks.com, rapidriverknifeworks.com. You will see what I mean. They're guaranteed for life. They're beautiful, but you know what? Chris Durson says use them. Don't put them up on a shelf. Use them. They're guaranteed for life. You're going to pass them down to the next generation, and they will sharpen them and refurbish them for free for as long as you own that knife. RapidRiverKnifeWorks.com is the website. The showroom is on US 2, just east of Rapid River. Make sure you check it out. It is a wonderful destination in the UP. We're talking about the UP right now also with Chad Stewart of the Michigan DNR. Chad is a wildlife biologist. We often think of Chad as the deer guy, but he's also an elk guy and he's a moose guy. Chad, I got to ask you here, and I'll ask you the number here that we have right now in a minute, but we know we didn't reach 1,000 moose by the year 2000. Do we know why?
No, I'm not sure we do. Again, I think that was always the hope, and whether that was a realistic goal or an optimistic goal, I don't know if I can say.
Yeah.
One thing that I think we're starting to recognize is that obviously moose are very specific in their habitat requirements and what they need. I think we have moose in a lot more places than we realize, but obviously at much lower densities. Whether that's part of some of just the changes that have occurred on the UP landscape over the last 20 or 30 years. I don't know if that altered the trajectory of their growth, whether it was a realistic expectation to reach that number to begin with, assuming everything would be stable, which it obviously wasn't. I don't know, Mike. I wish I had a better answer for you.
Well, we used to hear a lot about brainworm. Was that a legitimate concern? Was that a factor, you think?
We certainly have gotten moose with brainworm before. Typically, moose do not do well in areas where white-tailed deer have reasonable numbers, have high numbers, because of brainworm. It's something that deer can live with, moose cannot live with, essentially. But as you know, much of the UP has fairly low deer numbers currently.
Yeah.
So, it's still a thing, but I don't know if that's something that's going to limit the population. But again, that's one of the reasons why we're looking at some of this information in this study to see if we can get a better understanding for cause-specific mortality when it occurs, and at what level is it occurring within our population.
So are you using a number? Is there a number out there that is the estimated population of Michigan's UP moose herd?
No, the number that we've typically reported is based off of our survey in the core area. And, in 2023, that number was estimated at 426. And then last year, we did one in early 2025. That number was down. It was around 300. And of course, that brings up a lot of cause for alarm. But, I think part of it is us wanting to step back and look and say, listen, is our moose herd actually in a decline? Is it in a stable state? Is it declining, or is it shifting? And we're almost seeing a saturation in the core area of what that area can support or close to it, either from a habitat or a social dynamic standpoint. And the moose are starting to push out further. And some of the camera work that's being done by our researchers up there are certainly showing that we have reasonably higher moose densities outside of our current survey area, really toward the southwest. So we're in the process of trying to understand what's going on. Is it a true decline? Is it a movement or a shift in habitat, or is it a combination of both of those things?
And you're doing this research primarily with trail cams and now collars, correct?
Yeah. So we've got we literally have the Upper Peninsula covered in cameras. A lot of that is done for an existing wolf survey, but one of the benefits of that is that we're also able to pick up, detections of a lot of other species, whether it's white-tailed deer, moose, bears, you name it. So, our researchers have a plan to try to build out what we call almost like an occupancy, distribution of those species across the Upper Peninsula. And the collars are the ones that are going to give us a lot more detailed information. And these collars will be able to stay on these animals, anywhere from 7 to 10 years. So essentially the duration of their life. So we'll be able to obtain so much information from them in terms of their movement, their survival, like I said, where their habitat they're occupying, and even their pregnancy status, because we're monitoring them over the summer when they're having their calves, and trying to understand, how many calves they're having and what's the survival of those calves with drones.
Are wolves a factor? Can a wolf take down a full-size moose, or do they prey only on calves?
Yeah, I mean, wolves are certainly part of the conversation. It's one of the things that we are interested in. One of the older calves that was originally collared last year was killed by a wolf or a wolf pack. So that's the only wolf-related mortality that we saw of those 31 animals I think we were monitoring. So we collared 20. And then we were monitoring survival of 11 calves as well last year. So wolves are certainly taking moose. They've evolved to take moose. They've taken moose for tens of thousands of years. I think the question is, are they the only limiting factor, or are they just part of the equation that goes into the discussion? And that's what we're trying to uncover.
So when you were in the UP last week and you're collaring these animals, walk me through this process. How did you trap them or get your hands on them in the first place?
Yeah, we contract with a professional capture team. They're called Hella Wild. These are professionals that literally go around the country and really around the world capturing all kinds of animals. They had just come from Minnesota capturing moose. I believe they spend some of their time in Africa catching, animals on the savannah as well. So they are incredibly skilled at what they do. They are darting moose from a helicopter. The moose locations are typically relayed to the helicopter by spotter planes that we have up in the air. So we have staff that are up, and identifying moose on the landscape based on their observations. That's going back into the helicopter and command station. And then from that point, we have either ground crews or aerial teams that we mobilize to bring in to essentially process the moose. So we're putting collars on, we're taking different measurements and collecting samples, whether it's blood, fecals. We've done some ectoparasite exams and sampling. And then we reverse the animal and as quickly as we can, and it's up and gone.
So you're putting hands. I mean, you are physically putting hands on these giant critters.
100%. Yes, all of these animals are immobilized with the dart, and within minutes they're going down, and then within minutes we're having a team on them. So typically the Hella Wild team does the initial. Once they dart it from once the animal goes down, they land the helicopter, get their team out there, and immobilize the animal. So they'll put an ointment on their eyes to make sure that doesn't dry out. They'll keep a blindfold on. They'll put some like padding in the ears to limit stimulus. They'll make sure the airways are clear, that the animal, ungulates it's really important to keep them what we call sternal, because sometimes they can regurgitate, and if they swallow it back and it gets in their lungs, it could cause problems. So they make sure that the animal's safe and immobilized, do a quick initial monitoring of the vitals, and then our team shows up and they work on the animal and do all the information collecting, and then Hella Wild team moves out to dart another moose.
So were you part of these teams? Did you get dropped into the woods and have to jump on these? I mean, you don't jump on them, but you're working on them. Were you one of those guys?
Yeah, I was one of the ground team. I did not rate highly enough, I think, to get on the airplane. I was not VIP status enough, but no, I was on the ground team. We had, I think, 4 or 5 ground teams. We had, aerial teams. I think 3 ground teams. And yeah, we know where these moose are. We're staging, and we try to get in an advantageous position so when the animal is immobilized, we can get to it very quickly, because we want to limit the amount of time that animal's under anesthesia, so we can reverse it and get it back on its way.
Real quick, because I got to take a break. What was that like? I mean, these things are huge. I've seen them, from 50 yards, but I can't imagine being right there with them.
It's a core life memory that you'll always remember, right? And to see those animals run through 2 to 3 feet of snow like it's nothing, where you're just absolutely struggling, even in snowshoes, you gain so much more of an appreciation for that animal and how it's adapted to live in that landscape and that environment. Just an amazing animal that, and a memory that you'll always have the rest of your life.
I hope somebody shot some video of this.
We've got some really cool video. I saw some stuff,
okay.
That some of our staff put out, and obviously we've got tons of pictures, and I'm sure some of that will be coming out in future releases. Absolutely.
Excellent. I will look forward to seeing that. Can I offer you the coveted third segment? I have some more questions about a different topic, Chad.
Sure. Let's do it.
Excellent. The coveted third segment goes to Chad Stewart of the Michigan DNR. That was actually a setup. I had talked to Chad ahead of time. He knew he was going to be on for 3 segments, and so did I. But, All right, so we'll take a break. When we come back, we're going to switch gears. We're going to do a wrap-up of the deer season with Chad Stewart of the Michigan DNR. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC, that's 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Escanaba on WCHT, 600 AM, 93.5 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Killer Food Plots, Michigan-based family-owned Killer Food Plots. Now, I know you're not hunting over food plots right now, and you're not putting in food plots right now, but it's not going to be that much longer before it is time to put in your food plots. I would recommend You work with Michigan-based, family-owned Killer Food Plots. Rich Krazan does a wonderful job. Check out his website, killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. You'll see what I mean. We are going to be working very closely with Rich on our lease property this spring and summer to see if he can help us get a little bit better results to hold more deer on our property. That's killerfoodplots.com, killerfoodplots.com. Now, I have also said, and I've made no secret about this at all, I would love to see baiting come back. I'd love to see baiting come back. It's not going to come from the DNR. They have made it very, very clear that they're not in favor of baiting. There are moves in the legislature right now to bring back baiting. Chad Stewart is a big game specialist with the Michigan DNR. Chad, I want to talk about the upcoming season, but I kind of led into this accidentally, but I got to follow up on it. How do you, as a biologist, as the department, is this the right way to get things done by having the legislature try to make something happen that you, as wildlife managers, are vehemently against?
I think the best way that, I can answer that is that, the department is come out against, bills from the legislature regarding baiting, for the sole purpose that we feel that is a decision that should lie with our Natural Resources Commission. To me, that's where the conversation can really grab hold of a lot of the science and a lot of the data and stay a little bit more out of the opinion realm. And from my perspective, the point of managing our white-tailed deer or any of our wildlife species, it should be based in data and the information that we collect and the biology of the animal as much as possible. And those conversations are better held with our Natural Resources Commission.
We could spend an entire hour on the bait issue, and I just don't have the heart for it right now because I've talked about it a lot in the past, and I think there are better things to talk about. Let's take a look back at this past season, Chad. Are all the numbers in now? Do you folks have a pretty good feel for how this last season went? Yeah,
everything's closed. The reporting deadlines they're all passed. So from our perspective, everything is finalized. It's 281,000 deer, I think, were reported in Michigan through our online harvest reporting program, and that does not include our deer damage and our disease control permits. When we just talk about the hunting season, we exclude those, and that's pretty consistent with the previous 2 years. I think it's down a little bit from 2024, up a little bit from 2023. So it's really right in the normal range where we expected it to fall.
But 281,000 isn't enough, right? From a management perspective, at least in the southern part of the state, you really want to see more deer taken, correct?
So there's two ways to answer that question. One is that we would like to see more, especially antlerless deer, being taken. The other thing to keep in mind, Mike, is that's the reported number. So that's really what we're operating off of and we can use that pretty effectively as a trend measurement. Excuse me, but we also know that it's not the total number. Anywhere from probably 20 to potentially 30% of the deer are not being reported by hunters in Michigan. So we're still dealing with a level of uncertainty in what the actual numbers are. We can just go off the reported numbers. Now, we'll continue to do surveys every other year to try to check in and gauge, what that estimate will be. But, there are more deer being taken in Michigan by hunters than simply what's being reported.
Is the lack of reporting just general frustration with the DNR and saying, I'm not going to help those guys out?
I think there's some of that. I think there are still folks that don't realize that that's a requirement. And I've talked to these people before. They're not successful deer hunters every year, so they might only be successful at taking a deer every 4 or 5, maybe 7 or 8 years. So they've not gone through it yet, and they might not keep track of regulations every year. They still consider themselves deer hunters, but they might only hunt 1 out of every 5 years or 2 out of every 5 years. So there's a little bit of different things going on there, but certainly that's what we hear a lot of, is that we're not going to report it because it's none of the DNR's business. And I would argue that it can only hurt. The more people that report, the more information that we have, the better our data is going to be. And if you still don't like the recommendations that we're providing, then you can point to the data, and we're open to take criticism on that, or it's our responsibility to provide justification for why we're doing something. But when the data gets to be a little bit more uncertain, what you're seeing in the woods might not be reflected in the data.
I understand. I got to let you go because we're out of time. Appreciate your time. I'm looking forward to seeing the video and the stills of the Moose Project. Michigan.gov/DNR, Michigan.gov/DNR. We'll take a break when we come back. This week's Ask Avery question about the Master Angler Program. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS. You can hear us in Sandusky on WMIC 660 AM, 95.3 FM, and north of the bridge in Manistee, WTIQ 1490 AM, 95.3 FM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by the good folks from Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. The way this segment works is, this is your chance to get involved in the content of the show. You can ask me a question directly or something you want me to pass along to somebody else. The best way to get these questions to me is to send me an email, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Please don't send them to me in a social media message because I might not see it. But I will see an email, a good old-fashioned email. Send it to Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That is exactly what Bill Lutz did. Bill said, I have a two-part question for you. It is near and dear to me because I did not measure 2 fish of different species that I caught that would have given me the grand slam of 4 master angler fish species. And here's the question, how does the DNR determine the length of fish for master angler status each year? I see the length can change. Is this an average or some other measurement? The second part of the question, does the DNR determine the probabilities of catching a master angler fish for each species? So, for example, how many perch would one have to catch before landing a master angler perch? He says, I am a retired R&D leader. My mantra is, in God we trust, all others bring data. Fair enough, Bill. Well, Caitlin Boon has data. She is the coordinator for the Master Angler Program for the Michigan DNR, and she's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Caitlin, welcome. How are you?
Hi, great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Now, I had sent you this question earlier. You have seen this. I think it's an interesting question. What's the answer?
The answer is, maybe unfortunately for your listener, but it is more of an art than a science. So in the past, species lengths have been reviewed to raise or lower the limits depending on regulatory changes or to address changing abundance of species. So, for example, in 2021, muskellunge, the limit was raised from 42 inches to 46 inches because 42 was the statewide minimum. So if you were catching a muskie, it would qualify for master angler. We made it a little bit more restrictive. At the same time, brown trout went from 32 inches to 24 because there were only an average of 6 entries per year for brown trout, and that 32-inch minimum reflected maybe a historic brown trout fishery that we weren't at that time.
Sure.
There was another review of lengths in 2022 that was more comprehensive, looked at all of the fish, and there were a number of changes to lengths that year. And that followed the standard process for adjusting master angler minimum lengths, which is a proposal from the master angler lead, and then a discussion among our field biologists, and ultimately a recommendation from the field biologists about how to continue, because those field biologists are the ones actually talking to anglers, viewing the waters. So from master angler in Michigan, one of the really hard parts is that we've got inland streams and lakes, but we've also got the Great Lakes. So the biologists are really the people who are balancing what's something that makes it challenging to achieve, but is still achievable for the appropriate, like the right number of anglers.
So, and so what is the right number? Is there, would you like to see, say, 30 master anglers of a certain species, or 100, or do you look at it that way at all?
So I've been in this position for about 16 months, and one of the things that I did last fall was I surveyed master angler participants from the last 5 years since the program went digital. And that was one of the questions I asked. I said, approved master angler entries have doubled over the last 10 years. Do you think that we're at the right number of entries, or do you think there should be more or less? And like 90% of master angler participants said that they think that it's just right. So I have no plans to change the minimum required length for master angler entries. One of the comments I got that has really stuck with me was, I think rewarding people for a great catch is the way it should be, regardless of how many achieve that goal. So we're really looking at it as an inclusive program, not an exclusive program right now. If you're able to meet that minimum goal, I don't care how many people are meeting that minimum goal. It's challenging, but not impossible.
And it is different these days. It is now all based on length, correct?
Yes, it is. I do get some entries that maybe include the weight, but we no longer have that catch and keep. We no longer have really the separate requirements for catch and keep versus catch and release.
Real quick, Caitlin, before I let you go, if somebody catches a big fish, how would they go about entering the program?
There's an online application. If you search Michigan Master Angler, you'll be able to find the online application. I would encourage everybody, pretty much the only requirements are that you have a photo of the fish on a standard measuring device. So it needs to be a ruler. It can't be next to a shoe that you then measure. And you need to include that photo with your entry.
Excellent. Caitlin, I appreciate you stepping up and answering the question. Appreciate that very much. The website, michigan.gov/DNR. And I appreciate Bill Lutz, a listener, for reaching out with that question. A very, very good question. And now, Bill, you have your answer directly from the source in the Michigan DNR. Her name is Caitlin Boon. And a thank you to Security Credit Union for making each week's Ask Avery question possible. We will do this every week, as we have for several years now. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in our third hour, let's talk a little outdoor lifestyle with a guy who's been doing it for his entire life, and that's many, many years. His name is Tom Lounsbury.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yater Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, The Forward Corporation, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Hammond Drives and Equipment, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction. Welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. So glad to have you along with us as we continue to work our way through the winter, although this last week or so has felt, dare I say, almost spring-like. We lost a lot of snow, lost some ice. I have seen some dead skunks in the road. I have not seen or heard any red-winged blackbirds yet, although I have reports of them from southern Michigan. So it's coming. It's coming. I was thinking as I was talking with Chad Stewart in the previous hour about Michigan moose and the Moose Lift program, the project in general. And when he said it was 40 years ago, I'm like, oh my gosh, how can that be 40 years ago? It was. as I look around the outdoor scene here in Michigan, I'm really encouraged when I see a lot of the younger people coming into this, not just the way of life, not just participating as hunters and anglers and shooters and trappers, but also as being outdoor communicators. That is a role that has really changed. When I first got into it, when I first got into the Michigan Outdoor Writers Association years and years and years ago, back when Mort Neff was still alive and Mort was in the organization, it was primarily a writing organization. That's what you did. If you were an outdoor communicator, you were a writer. Well, these days that's changed. There are still outdoor writers, but there are outdoor broadcasters, there are social media people, there are podcasters. But I'm so encouraged to see that Michigan is still a hotbed of outdoor communicators because we have so much here to talk about and so much to do. But going back to the, 40 years ago, the moose lift, there aren't a lot of people who are still actively involved in outdoor communication that have been around, I got to be honest, longer than I have. Well, Tom Lounsbury is one of them. Tom's been doing this a while, and he's still at it, and I have much respect for Tom, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Rambo, welcome back.
Hey, it's always an honor to be on your show, Mike. Always an honor.
Well, thank you. The honor is mine to talk to you. I mean, we've been doing this a long time, Tom.
Oh, we sure have. We sure have. Yeah, and I do remember the moose lift. I can't believe it. It was 40 years ago. Boy, time does fly.
Yeah, and I was just talking to Chad Stewart. Obviously, when you talk to Chad, you talk whitetails, but he's also involved in the moose research. And I don't know if you remember this, but the big push back then was we're going to have 1,000 moose in the UP by the year 2000. Well, we certainly didn't make that, but it is cool to know that we have some moose in the UP.
Oh yeah. And it's that used to always be moose territory in that, but I think one of the big problems they had was that brain worm that whitetails get.
Yeah.
And that didn't help them any. But anyway, they're there, and I'm really rooting for it. I hope I'm around when it'll be a limited draw, but I wouldn't mind doing a Michigan moose hunt down the road.
Well, yes, and that was the other thing. They said we'll have 1,000 moose by the year 2000, and one of the reasons Safari Club got involved was there would be a limited Michigan moose hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. But and knowing my luck, though, if it ever comes up for a draw, it only took me 36 years to get a Michigan elk tag. So we'll see how this goes.
Don't even talk to me about an elk tag because I don't have one and I never will get one. So at least you got one.
Oh, I got one. I loved every minute of it. Was glad to get it. But 36 years I dedicated, buy it every year, and by golly, I finally got her. In fact, I was stunned. I had to ask my wife to read the computer. Am I reading this right?
I am going to win the Pure Michigan hunt, though. I'll tell you that right now.
Hey, that's always a good thing for people to, get into. That is actually an excellent thing. I always buy, the Pure Michigan, numbers in that. I'm dedicated in doing that when I get my hunting and fishing license.
I do as well. When did you have that elk hunt? How many years ago was that?
That was 2020, and I was worried it wasn't going to happen because of COVID, and they were putting all these restrictions on, and I had originally been looking forward to where they have that gathering before the hunt. People are there that received it. They go through it. Everything was online. What a disappointment! But I made her through, and I had a great time. I ended up with a cow tag or an antlerless tag. It was the only year I applied. I always applied for bull only. It was the only year I applied for any, and I'm so glad I got that cow tag. And I got to tell you, there was 3-4 day seasons, and I experienced all of the 3-4 day seasons because mine was early. It started in August when it's full moon and 90 degrees during the day. All you found was elk tracks from the night before. But I had an opportunity on each of those hunts to shoot a nice bull. Do you think I could get a clear shot at a cow elk?
No.
There was always a calf in the way, all these eyes looking at you. Anyway, on the first night of my third hunt, I managed to get a clear shot at a nice cow and put her right down. The fortunate part was I dropped her right next to one of those gas trails, and it was easy access to get her out, because sometimes getting those elk out can be interesting. Yeah. So,
well, I've heard that several times, that it is much easier to shoot a bull than it is a cow.
Oh, I had, well, the just before I found this cow in that, I had a chance at a magnificent, he was at least a 6x6 that came out and laid down about 80 yards away. And then a little after that, we found the cows. So, but yeah, it was amazing. Of course, I'd run into other elk hunters that all they were seeing was cows and no bulls. That's the way it goes.
Even in a hunt like that, it's still hunting.
Oh, anybody who thinks going in a Michigan elk hunt is like walking in a cow pasture has never experienced that elk. They get a whole different attitude. The cows especially, they're number one on the list. It don't take them long to get real flighty. And anyway, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that early season and experiencing the transition and seeing fall come in and the bulls starting to eventually bugle. Oh, what a moment! I'll take that hunt to my grave. I loved every minute of it.
I don't know.
Of course, I would not do it without a guide. DIY would not have been.
No.
Hey, the Pigeon River Forest. Oh my goodness! What a patchwork of where you can, where you can't. And half the time I was with my guide, I had no idea where I was.
I think that's true of a lot of things. If you haven't done them before, and obviously most Michigan hunters have not hunted Michigan elk before, but I'm thinking, the first time out on big water for walleye or for salmon, why not go out with a charter captain? Why not go out with a fishing guide? Or even turkey hunting? Why not go out with somebody to learn, to help you shorten your learning curve?
That's right. I had an opportunity a couple of years ago to hunt with Rod Little, and he's a champion turkey caller. He's one of the pros for Quaker Boy and that. And he and I were sitting in the blind. He says, "Probably you know more about this than I do." I says, "No, I'm going to sit here and let you do the work." And by golly, I've been hunting turkey since the late 1960s. I learned a lot just sitting there and listening to him and watching him out at work. It's a never-ending learning experience, and I loved every minute of it. And he called in a dandy gobbler for me, and what a moment. What a moment.
Yeah, he's certainly one of the best.
Oh, he sure is. He sure is.
So as we're talking about turkeys, I am now reminded, you not only got a Michigan elk tag, you hunted the first season ever for Michigan turkeys.
Yep, 1968. And they had, there's different areas. My area had 30 hunters. And I found out about it from watching Morton Now on Michigan Outdoors Television, and he explained how to do everything. And so I just sent it in. And I was almost like when I found out I had an elk tag, I got this big manila envelope, and it had some how-to do and all this stuff. And, oh, what a moment. Didn't know what I was doing. I went to the hardware store, and, no turkey calls on the shelves there, and we had to special order it. And anyway, and, I didn't get a turkey, but I was smitten with that spring turkey hunting atmosphere.
Did you have an encounter?
I lived for it.
Did you get a bird to gobble? Did you get that part of the experience on that first time?
I shut him right off. Obviously, I didn't know how to talk right. And I actually saw one at a distance.
Charlie, are we out of time on this segment? Okay. Hang tight, Tom. My clock was off. A problem on my end. I screwed up here. But we got to take a break. We're talking with Tom Lounsbury, just a noted veteran outdoorsman, much respected, well-respected across the state. A lot of things we can talk about with Tom. And we will. But got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, more with Tom. And then, of course, we'll wrap up the show with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. And I think this week Dave has another recipe that I have video of. How cool is that? Charlie says, "Here we go." I'm like, you know, Charlie, that break is 4 minutes every week for years. I don't know why that should be such a surprise to me. Oh, you can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Ludington on News 97, 98, 98.7 WLDN. You can hear us in Taos on WIOS, 1480 AM, 106.9 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Reader Landscaping. I got a feeling the folks at Reader are starting to get a little bit antsy with this break in the weather here. I don't think they've been plowing much snow lately. Probably getting ready for maintenance season, which is going to be coming up here real soon. Listen, I don't have a big place. I don't have a big yard. But all of my maintenance is, well, not all of it. I still do my own mowing. Most of my maintenance is done by the folks at Reader. The way I look at it is, look, I could do it. Hey, as a kid, I grew up on a farm and I worked on a golf course for years. So I have the knowledge on how to do things like that. But these days, I'm not sure that it's my best use of time. I mean, I can call Reader. They can bring in 2 or 3 young guys to get the job done in half the time, a third the time of what I could. And because I do a lot of different jobs with Reader, I got one guy I reach out to, John Gower. I say, John, here's what I want to do. And he sets it all up. And the next thing I know, there's a crew over there cleaning out brush out by the pond, or they're doing some pruning of the trees. It works out really nice. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate the folks at Reader. And they've been doing it for 60 years. So you know they're doing it right. The website, readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. Right now, talking with an outdoor icon in Michigan. His name is Tom Lounsbury, outdoor writer for many, many years. And Tom, you're also a radio guy. And I remember that first conversation that you and I had. I think we were in, we were in North
Rogers City.
Rogers City. That's exactly right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And has that
and
been?
I'll never forget. And you're the one that helped me get into radio, which I've always deeply appreciated. But I'll never forget sitting in that cabin interviewing you while the salmon tournament was ongoing and so forth. And this cricket lit up, and I wanted to squash him. But after I heard the show, I'd hire that cricket. What the perfect ambiance for being in a cabin in the middle of the woods.
So this is coming back to me now. Was I your first radio interview?
Yes, you were.
Wow. Well, that's pretty cool.
That goes back a ways.
Yeah, it does. It does. So listen, when you look at the outdoor landscape in Michigan today, what do you see? Do you see more positives than negatives, or vice versa?
Well, I see. I'm an optimist. I see a lot of positives, but in my area right now, there's like certain issues going on with like solar and all this stuff. But that's the sign of the times. But I'm happy with the government programs I have my family farm in. I'm very happy with it, and I think it's a great program. And I'm living in heaven. I'm living in the middle of my habitat here. So, yeah, I see positives. I see. I'm an optimist. I see a lot of attitudes coming. I appreciate the fact, the efforts to get youth involved and all this stuff. I'm really pleased that Governor Whitmer this past December signed in where there's going to be hunter safety education allowed in schools if they so choose to, bring it on.
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful, and getting that interest. And that's the key that I'm really focusing on, is to make sure we get youth interested and getting them involved.
If you want to continue to be an optimist, stay off Facebook. I'm serious. And I know, I know you are. I know you don't do that stuff. But of all the different social medias that I do, there are more negative comments on Facebook. Sometimes I post things out there, and I look at Tom. I have to. It's part of my job, right? And I know if I post something on Facebook, it's going to get a lot of attention. But sometimes I don't have the heart for it. It's like I don't want to deal with it.
I hear you. Yeah, I have absolutely nothing to do with it. I don't even know how to text. The only phone I carry is the flip phone, and it's only on when my wife tells me to have it on.
So that explains all these texts that I send you that you don't respond to?
That's right. I've never texted in my life.
I thought you were just being rude.
And it really gets me when I've been in the outdoors. One of the things I tell kids when I adopt them for a deer hunt, is they start pulling that iPhone out. I say, I may have to pay for it, but I see it again. You're not gonna find it in the brush. That puts a stop to that. So anyway, I'm definitely old school, Mike.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with that. When I look around the scene here in Michigan, and I'm not as optimistic as you are, but I try to be. I search for reasons to be optimistic. And as I look around the outdoor scene, I mean, my goodness, you look. We got eagles back now, or eagles like we've never had. We've got wild turkeys all over the place. We got a Saginaw Bay walleye fishery that's world class. In fact, we got a Michigan walleye fishery that's world class. Sturgeon are coming back. You can complain about the deer hunting if you want to, but there are just so many good things in this state that weren't here as an outdoor opportunity when I was a kid growing up on the west side of the state.
Yep, the same thing with me growing up in the Thumb. You and I had the same kind of experience, but I got to tell you, as an outdoor communicator, Michigan, I feel blessed to be in the state of Michigan, and I haven't sampled all that it offers. And I mean, what a fabulous, and what they offer you, the hunting, the fishing, and hey, even bird watching, whatever you want, it's out there.
Yeah, do you think that in Michigan you could sample every outdoor opportunity that's out there?
I'm working on it. I just got into bird watching pretty serious, and that's a real learning process for me. But I enjoy that, and of course, when you do the foraging for like morels and all that's another atmosphere I dearly love. And you just follow the seasons, and starting with the spring turkey season. Anybody who's never experienced a Michigan spring turkey hunt, Michigan, especially in the Lower Peninsula, you don't have to travel far today to find excellent turkey hunting opportunities. So. Yeah, it's what I live for. And I always apply for the 0234, where, it's private land only in southern Michigan, but up in north I can go on public land and everything. And I thoroughly, personally enjoy those hills up by Atlanta for turkey hunting. I like running and gunning and wide open spaces, and but it's out there. Yeah, in fact, there's no doubt in my mind, Michigan is one of the best turkey hunting hotspots in the nation.
Our success rate is right up there near the top in the country.
Oh yeah. I love the fact that my Thumb area often has the best success rate. And not that long ago, I think the first turkey season wasn't until the early 90s, and they had put the birds in during the mid-1980s. And, oh, my goodness, they're everywhere now.
They are. They're absolutely everywhere. And it is the most addicting outdoor activity I've ever found myself involved in. The first time you set up and make a call to a bird and he gobbles back at you, it's over.
Oh, my.
It's over.
It goes right to the marrow of your bones here and that. Go, coming back at you.
Yeah.
I love it. I just love it. So, yeah, and I'm definitely anticipating it already. I mean, it's coming down to, not that far away.
No, it's not. And last year, I actually did not shoot a bird first season in several years. But what I did do, Tom, and this goes back to what you were saying, I took my oldest grandson, Trent, out. And Trent is an avid outdoorsman, but he's been primarily a deer hunter. He had never just taken the time to hunt turkeys in the springtime. I went out with Trent, and it took, I think, 3 or 4 trips, but we got him his first bird. And that was... not that I needed my turkey hunting passion to be rekindled, but it took it to the next level to see him get a bird.
Oh, it sure does. And I love calling for folks. I've been doing it, they started in 2017. The DNR has a Becoming an Outdoors Woman Turkey Workshop in May, and these ladies show up, and a lot of them have never even touched a shotgun, and I actually sit through the class, and then I act as a mentor guide. They have a hunt there, And those ladies, they're there to learn. They listen. They don't hesitate to try shooting. And when I've had them out and bringing a gobbler in, I've had more fun than bringing it in for myself. It's what a thrilling moment.
It is. There's something about talking to a turkey, and you can learn so much just by listening too. You know, the tendency, at least my tendency early on was, oh, this is fun. You know, I make a call and a bird gobbles. Well, I'm going to call again, and he's going to gobble, and I'm going to call. And pretty soon you educate the birds. You know, when you get to the point where you say, all right,
oh, yeah,
I'm going to back off here a little bit. I'm going to tease him a little bit, make him curious. You can have so much fun with that.
Oh, yeah. I got, it was the first gobbler I ever shot on the family farm here, and this was 2021. And he was a half mile away, and he's talking and talking. And then I could tell he's just hanging up, and I actually was comfortable and fell asleep. And he woke me up. He was out strutting by my decoy, and you know, Mike, the one thing I've learned about turkey hunting, I'm not a trophy turkey hunting. He was one of my biggest gobblers because he was the first one that came in. So, but I mean, I don't know how long I fell asleep, but it took him a while to finally. He got curious and came looking and saw the decoy, and then he started sounding off. And, oh, what a way to wake up, let me tell you.
Oh, I know, Tom. I've been there. More than once, I have woken up with a bird strutting in my decoys just like that. Oh, man.
Oh, yeah. And what a sight. And nothing beats the picture of a wild turkey in the sunlight with the iridescent feathers, and he's fanned out, and the red, white, and blue on the head. And, oh. Like Benjamin Franklin, he thought that should have been our national symbol, but I'm glad because we wouldn't be able to allow to hunt
him. Yeah. Well, Tom, now that you've got me sufficiently geeked up for spring turkey season, I guess it's got to be time I got to let you go. But it's always a pleasure, my friend, to talk with you and to share some memories.
It's a pleasure and an honor, Mike. Yeah. You have a good spring that's soon going to be here.
It will be here soon, and I also want to thank you because but I'll let everybody else know. I reached out to you at the last minute because I had a guest who couldn't come on, and you graciously agreed to join me, and you filled that time very well, Tom. So I appreciate that, and we'll talk again.
Hey, it was my pleasure, Mike.
Alrighty, we'll take a break. When we come back, a few more things to talk about, and then we'll wrap up this week's show with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. Where did the last 3 hours go? Pretty fast this week, at least from my perspective. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 FM. And you can hear us, making sure I got all of our affiliates, you can hear us also in Saginaw on WSGW 790 AM 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now. I'm here for 3 hours each week, and for this 3 hours, I claim this one little corner of the building. Although, Charlie, I was in here Monday. I saw Joe Volk was in here sitting in this chair. I had a little talk with Joe, and I pointed out to him that he does not have a logo behind him, so this kind of makes it official. I'm here with Charlie Root. Now, you know that routinely Charlie gets crowds of people, well, families, lined up in the parking lot chanting, "Charlie, Charlie." As I look out there now, Charlie, last week it was because it was so cold, nobody showed up. This week it's a monsoon. Nobody's out there, Charlie. It's not that they don't want to be. It's just that the logistics of dealing with the weather. Because you know that they think the world of you, right? Okay. Oh, so I do really appreciate, Charlie Rood, Jonathan Dent, these guys helped to make this show happen. When I first explored the option of working here at WSGW, the program director there, the guy in charge, said, "Avery, you have the technical ability. Do you want to just go into a studio and you run everything? You run your board and everything?" And I thought, no, because I want to be able to concentrate. And believe me, I'm I'm a geek. I like the techie stuff. I like the bells and whistles and the sliders and the knobs and the waveforms and the VU meters. I love all that stuff. But I wanted to be able to concentrate on the content side of the show. And I said, no, I think I'd rather work with one of your people. And, you know, I've worked with several people here over the years. And it's been a really good partnership. I really value all of my broadcast stations. And I've said this before. I say this each show. Radio's changing. And to be able to get access to weekend airtime is a really, really big deal. And the fact that I have so many stations around the state who are willing to give up hours of their weekend programming to me to talk about the outdoors, hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping. I mean, how cool is that? It's not an opportunity that I would have thought would ever present itself. I guess maybe there was one time early on I figured I'd end up retiring from television news, although I don't think I had that thought for very long. But television news was a great experience because it taught me some basics of broadcasting. But I'm glad to be out of it. And now social media. Talking with Tom Lounsbury earlier. Social media is a very interesting tool. It goes very quickly from social media to anti-social media. But I don't have a choice. I don't feel I have a choice. I guess I could. I guess I could just walk away from it all. But I think I'd be, in some ways, stepping on my own toes by doing that. Because I can reach a fair number of people easily, and to be honest, free. It's not like I'm paying for airtime like I used to for the TV show. I can reach so many people free that I can't ignore the venue, the opportunity, the platform, whatever. But when you start doing that, you open yourselves up to everybody. And, you know, I see this quite a bit. If I get if I get a post that gets a lot of attention, I will always get a lot of negative attention as well. And I've just learned that you don't let it bother you. You know, you got to be thick-skinned. If you're going to put yourself out there, and believe me, I never put myself out there as an expert. You will never, ever hear me say I'm an outdoor expert. I'm a hunting expert. I'm a fishing expert. Nothing. I'm not an expert in anything. I can barely figure out how to do the job that I do, but I'm not an expert at it. I just have a few years of doing it and a few years of experience. But when you set yourself up as an expert, you really draw a lot of attention, and I'm not going to do that. I get enough attention without it. But, and this is for you too. I mean, just if you're doing what you think is the right thing and you believe in what you're doing and you're working hard to try to do the right thing, just go with it. And it'll work out. It'll work out. You might not end up doing 45 years in broadcasting, but whatever this is that you want to do will work out. Whether it's you want to become a better hunter, a better angler, whether you want to spend more time with your kids, whether you want to introduce more people to the outdoors, whether you want to raise some money for charities that you have a strong feeling for, whatever it is, you just got to do it. You got to put yourself out there. Some things coming up here. This weekend, Outdoor Rama and MUCC's convention in Novi, at what used to be the Novi Expo Center, then the Suburban Collection Showplace. Now I don't know what it is. Our big Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auctions coming up Saturday, March 7th. That's at the Great Hall in Midland. Probably the best. If you want to get tickets for that, just send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, and I will send you the link to do that. Next Wednesday Night Live at the Lumberjack Restaurant in West Branch is coming up Wednesday, April 15th. That's tax day. We will open up reservations for that on March 1st. Love to see you there. That's always a great time. So 2 big events coming up for me, our Trinity Monitor Dinner and then Wednesday Night Live. And those are both obviously open to you. Hoping you can join us. My name is Mike Avery. This show is called Outdoor Magazine. My website, mikeaveryoutdoors.com. And again, the email address is mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. Another recipe. I'll be honest, I don't remember what it is, but I do remember, I think I have video of it. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. So glad to have you along with us. Whether you're listening to the broadcast version of the show on the weekend or the podcast during the week, I do certainly appreciate you being along with us. If you've been with us before, you know I love to wrap up each week's show with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. One of the best known, most well-known wild game chefs, certainly in the state of Michigan. He's been doing this for a long, long time. Good friend of mine, and I always welcome our conversations, and I appreciate it. And Dave is with us once again. David, welcome back. How are you?
I'm very good, Mike. How about yourself?
I am doing just great, and I'm getting a good response, Dave, from these recipes we've been doing and running the old video of you doing these recipes. Have you been hearing anything?
People at work tell me the same thing. You know, they call me out into the dining room and say, "Geez, we just saw you on the phone."
Excellent. Well, what do you have for us this week?
Well, we have one of our best-selling Alfredos of all time when we had the restaurant. It's a salmon and fettuccine Alfredo, and actually one time some people brought me some sheephead, and I did this with a sheephead recipe too. A sheephead is nice. So we need about a pound and a half of boneless, skinless salmon flesh, 1 medium onion diced fine, 3 or 4 cloves of garlic, plus or minus whatever your family enjoys, 8 to 10 slices of crispy cooked bacon and crumbled, 2 ounces of dry white wine, a quart of half and half, a half a stick of butter, fresh butter, a pound of fettuccine cooked al dente. You don't want to cook it to be in mush. 2 sprigs of fresh basil or a half a teaspoon of dried basil. A package of snow pea pods, fresh or frozen. Or if you can't find pea pods, just use regular peas, shucked peas. A cup of Parmesan cheese, 2 tablespoons of fresh chopped parsley, a dash of nutmeg, which is optional. It's kind of more of the Italian way that they would do it. They would put a little bit of nutmeg in some of these Alfredos, and a lot of fresh ground black pepper. Mike,
the more the better.
Right, I know. So what you want to do is slice the fish in julienne strips about 1 by 2 inches maybe or so, or you can cut it in cubes and then set it aside for just a little minute here. In a large, heavy-bottom saucepan, saute the onions, the garlic, and the cooked bacon in a small amount of butter for just a few minutes. You don't want to brown it. You just want to get the flavor broke loose, and you want to make sure the onions are still transparent. Add the wine and cook down fast to reduce by 1/2 of volume. And that's going to concentrate that flavor of whether a Chablis or a Chardonnay or whatever you're going to have with this meal. Use the same wine in your dish. Add the half and half in the butter. Bring it up to a boil. When it comes to a rolling boil, add the pasta and stir it. So it, and then reduce the heat down to simmer. And you want to stir it often. And basil, either the sprigs or the dried basil, a little bit of nutmeg, and peas or pea pods, whatever you're using. Be careful to stir the bottom to avoid sticking. And then you want to add the salmon, and you want to not break it up. You want to just barely stir it around for about 3 or 4 minutes, just till the salmon is just done. I mean, it's going to be inevitable that you're going to break some of this fish up, but try to keep it as intact as possible. Now, the Parmesan is going to be the thickener. So you're going to add this little by little to the sauce and stir it gently again, and then save some to sprinkle on the top. Serve the pasta on large platters and top with chopped parsley, Parmesan, and lots of fresh ground black pepper.
Lots.
This is going to really enhance the flavor. Lots for Mike.
What is this one called?
There we go. We have it.
What is this one called again, Dave? I'm sorry.
Salmon and fettuccine Alfredo on page 15.
I'm looking at my list. I don't know if I have this one or not. Have you seen this one on the list? Do you know I have it for sure or no?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. I don't think I do. If I do have it, I will certainly. Yeah, if I do have it, I'll certainly post it. I'll look for it. But it's fun to look at the old videos.
We sold so much of this.
Yeah.
We sold so much of this. This was one of the very all-time favorites for Alfredo's.
All right. I will take a look, and if I have it, I'll certainly post it. All right, buddy. Listen, I appreciate your time, and I will wish you a wonderful week, and we'll talk again next week on the show with another recipe.
Right. Have a blessed week, Mike.
You as well. Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine concept, franchise, show, project, adventure, venture, whatever you want to call it. I've been working with Dave for a long, long time. And I have a lot of video of him in the kitchen. I don't know if I have this week. If I do, I will certainly post it. You'll find it on my Facebook page. I'll put it on Instagram as well. The website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and the email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what's on your mind. If you have a question for the Ask Avery segment, send that to me as well. Again, the website, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next time right here on Outdoor Magazine.